So I get asked a lot of questions all the time. One of the recent questions that I've been asked is, how do I find a manufacturer? And the reason why I get asked a lot of questions is because I've been doing this a long time. I've been in the trenches. I'm not a teacher. I'm a practitioner. I'm somebody who's had a fashion brand for 22 years. I had a showroom, a wholesale showroom for 10 years. I had a retail store. I was a retail buyer at the start of my career and manager. So whatever I'm going to tell you on my channel are things that I know that have worked or not worked, or because I've personally experienced them. I haven't been doing this a few months, a few years, not even, I mean, I've been doing it for decades, literally. So I just want to get that out of the way. I'm not a teacher. I'm going to just tell you my experience and what I know works and what I've seen not work. So you're always going to get like the real deal. I'm a straight shooter. I was born and raised in New York, and I tell it like it is, and that's my style. So if you're here for it, I'm glad you're here. So the question that I get asked a lot is, how do I find a manufacturer? And the thing is that when you're starting out, yes, I mean, you can go on to Alibaba, you can go on to, if you're in the US, onto Makers Row, you can go to Instagram, you can Google search. Those are definitely opportunities and ways to find people, especially if you haven't been in the industry and you don't have any connections. I guess the next thing would be, how do you vet the manufacturer? I think that's probably the bigger consideration, because everyone is different. Like, there are certain manufacturers, they'll do very high minimums. And if you're starting out and you don't have orders, that's not going to be the right factory for you. So the thing is, like, you really want to find a match of a manufacturer that's where you are, because some people will be like, oh my God, they wanted me to do 1,000 units and I don't have any orders, and not the right factory. I mean, if they're not willing to start with like 50 to 100 pieces, change factories. I mean, that's something, if you like their work and their quality and the people that they make for, and you're like, this is an amazing factory, you can keep it in your back pocket. It's something to consider for later. But when you're starting out, you want to find a factory that is willing to work with a startup, willing to work with, or even if you've just began, but you're still only making 50, 100, 300 pieces, whatever it is. I mean, today, 300 pieces is a good order. Back in the day, China, I remember China, they wouldn't talk to, and they wanted to do like 600 units of a color, like, 3,000 minimum, things like that. Like, those days are gone. Like, that changed, like, probably, I mean, several years ago, way before COVID, the manufacturers, their minimum started lowering. I think because they saw the business was changing. A lot of new people were coming into the industry. A lot of people were going direct to consumer. They were starting smaller. I think that a lot of and especially with retail shrinking, a lot of the people that used to give them these huge orders, because they were selling to all these big retailers and department stores. And as those people started to phase out, then those orders started to diminish. So I think they're willing, they became more willing to start with people that they could see a future with, that could grow with them. A lot of manufacturers will, take somebody that started at 50 pieces, and then they become like their biggest, brand, because they kind of grew with them, and then they end up doing like most of their work, and the company could have grown to like tens of millions of dollars, that kind of thing. So I think they're also looking at, where the opportunity is for them. But if they see you as somebody that's going to be like a pain in the ass, and just to be honest, and they don't really think it's going to go anywhere, they're probably not going to give you the time of day. But anyway, that being said, you want to find someone that's willing to work with you. You want to find someone where the communication is good, that it flows. If you find it really hard to communicate, if you find that, and again, there is a language barrier a lot depending on the country you're working in, but that being said, you should still be able to find people that, have command of the language you're speaking and are able to communicate with you and, give you answers timely and answer your questions. Like, if you send an email with, you ask 3 questions and you get an email back and they answered one of them, like, that's annoying. Like, nobody's got time for that. You know what I mean? Like, they should be like copy and pasting your questions into an email back to you and answering each one, one by one in the return email. And they should be doing it within, 24 hours at the most, So you want to make sure that the communication's good, the communication, and, if somebody's not getting back to you for like over even a day, even 24 hours is a long time, I think. If they're not getting back to you within 12 hours, 24, fine. But like, if they're taking 2 and 3 days, like, that's not a good turnaround for communication with the factory. You need your answers, etc. The other thing is when you're working with a manufacturer, you want to make sure that they have everything that they need for the style that you're creating. And now if they're sourcing everything, that's one thing, but if you need to supply certain things, you want to make sure, your labels, whatever it is, you want to make sure they have it. Because anytime, most factories will not even start your production if they don't have all the components, because they can't just start it, get it onto the machines, and all of a sudden they have to stop and wait for something. So they're more inclined to hold off on doing anything until they have all the components. So that's something you want to consider as well. I mean, honestly, I watch these YouTube channels and they'll be there's a 30-minute video. It's how to start a brand. And I'm just I laugh because I'm oh my God, it's I could sit here and talk to you about a factory, communicating with factories. I could be here for the next couple of hours just talking about how to communicate with a factory. And I feel I don't want to minimize, the importance of certain things. And, the factory communication is really important. And, getting the samples back, having proper communication, understanding what's involved, understanding what the costs are, how much they're charging for samples, how much they're charging for bulk, what their lead times are, what their time, because somebody could tell you, you could be reaching out to a factory and they'll tell you they have 8-week turn time, means they'll ship it to you in 8 weeks. And then when you go to place the order 6 months later, their factory is busy and they're working more on a, 9 or 12 week or whatever, so that's another thing. You never want to kind of, align yourself thinking about a timeline that you were told months earlier. You should always want to double check and make sure at the time of placing an order what the bulk, when you place the bulk, what the and that's the bulk is the complete order. They call it a bulk. So you want to make sure that you know what the delivery time is at the time of placing the order. I guess I work off the cuff. I don't have a script, as you can see, so everything's in my head, so I'm going by memory and things I've done. So I feel it's important to have the communication with them, make sure they have everything. If they're sending you samples, making sure that you're getting back to them quickly with any type of comments. If they're making your patterns, I don't know if they're making your patterns or you had a pattern made, local to you, and then there's many ways to work. I'm actually working on a book, Fashion Brand Secrets, and I really go over all of the ways that you can work, because there isn't just one way. I mean, you might be doing things domestically and then you're moving, a bigger quantity overseas, for instance, or you might want the factory to do everything from the first sample, so they're doing the first sample for you, and you may want them to, you're doing a full package, so they need to get the fabric and the trim and the zippers and the labels, etc., and content care and everything. Or are you supplying anything? So there's no one and done one way that everybody works. There are a few ways, and but you just need to know what, if you're working with a factory and they're providing everything, that's probably the best, especially starting out, because at least your costs, your costs are fixed. Because if you have to, if you have to get fabric or trim or whatever, and then you have to ship it to them, and there's also things that could happen, maybe it goes wrong. They cut the fabric and the fabric that was shipped was the wrong fabric, and you didn't have enough checks and balances in place, which you should. You should have some checks and balances in place to make sure that doesn't happen. But as a new person, you may not know to do that, and you'll be oh yeah, my fabric supplier shipped the factory, and now they cut it, and then they sent me the pre-approval sample, and it's not the right fabric, or it's not the right color, the dye lot is off. Just know that this is production, and it is not a straight line, and everything can go wrong, and it will. Murphy's Law will prevail no matter what. So you need to be constantly know what's coming at you, and just know to put out fires, ask questions later. That's what I learned, is you just got to make the solution, figure out what's wrong, get the solution going, and then ask questions later, or figure out in the future how to prevent it, that kind of thing. So yeah, and as far as payment terms and things like that, you're going to have to give a deposit. Usually to a new factory, they want, at least 30 to 50% up front. So again, you want to make sure that, you're vetting the factory, that they're legitimate, that you want to find out what other brands they work with, and they should tell you that. They shouldn't feel like, oh, our brand list is like proprietary and no, they should tell you, I'm working with this brand and that brand and whatever. That shouldn't be something that they gatekeep from you, because you want to know. And then also you want to maybe get some samples from them. If you don't know their quality, you want them to provide, maybe they have some examples of the work that they do. Maybe, do you have any samples you can send us of this or whatever? So you could ask for that. If they have any samples or photos or whatever, like get something to kind of see the kind of work that they do. Also, not every factory does everything, and not every factory does everything right. For instance, like a jacket factory is probably going to do jackets. They're not doing like t-shirts. You know what I mean? Like typically, typically a factory, if they're doing knits, maybe they're not doing wovens. So, factories also, they kind of specialize, and in doing so, they do what they do really well instead of being a jack of all trades. And and there's different machinery, knitwear, there's Mero machine, like there's different machinery for different fabrications. So that's also why people, they specialize, they have certain machinery, and that's what they do, and they just do it well. So you want to make sure that you're in a factory that does the things that you want to do. And also, you don't want to make people do things that they don't do typically, because look, unless you're in a factory, you're growing a business, you have an amazing relationship, you guys are growing together, maybe, they're growing with you as well, and, you want to get into swimwear, making it up, and, there's like different machinery for that or whatever, and maybe they'll make that investment because they know that you're going to give them business, you've been a good partner with them, so maybe they'll buy machinery, but that's like something down the road. If you're new, that's not something you're thinking about yet, but it's something you can think about for the future, that you can grow with a factory. And I just want to think if there's anything else that I want to say. Maybe next time I'll have like some notes, but I mean, it's all in my head. So I also feel like I have this information and I want to get it out there. And I think there's a lot of people that really don't have that much experience. And I think, anything that's more than what gets you like incrementally ahead. I think that's great, so that's great. But I think that it's important to, to be hopefully, learning things from people that have actually done them. So that's, I think, really important. And the other thing I wanted to say is I have in my bio, there's a link. You can grab a couple of things. I have a resource for you that's free. That is all. It's the 8 mistakes that people make, brands make, founders make. So I think that's super important. Definitely grab that. And I also have an assessment as well. So if you click my Beacons link, there's an assessment. These are both free to you, and it's an assessment that tells you you'll fill it out, and it's like an app, and it'll tell you where you are in your journey. So that's really important. And also get on the wait list for my book, Fashion Brand Secrets. I would love for you to get on the wait list, so that way when the book is live, you'll be the first to know, because that's really important, because that's a great, I really, again, I will go deeper on anything that you'll learn on this channel. So it's really it's like a handbook, it's a guide, and it will be my fashion framework. I have a specific framework. I also have the Fashion Brand Starter Kit, which is in there as well. There's a link in there, and that is something that's paid, but you also get a 20-minute Ask Me Anything with that. So that's really a good value in there, because my consulting is like $5 to $1,000 per hour, depending on the scope. So that's a really good value for even just the 20-minute consult with me. But then you get the whole Fashion Brand Starter Kit, which is amazing. So check those out as well. I'm Angela Taylor George. I'm so happy that you're here. If you want to know if you need a tack pack, watch the next video.